Here we are with the July. This is going to be a summery type butterfly pattern. As always, we're going to roll on our color. These white foam rollers are exceptional for rolling on anything with a little bit of texture, and if you're going to dry brush, which we're not going to do today, if you're going to dry brush, then it has just a nice even texture that it leaves behind, and that way you get the tooth that you need to leave the dry brushing on. So you get a nice even coat. As you can see, this is not covering very well because it's a darker color without a lot of pigment. It's evergreen, and so I'll have to let it dry and then do a second coat. I wanted to share, when I trace my patterns on, or when I'm going to create a pattern, I use these this nice roll of yellow tracing paper, and I lay my piece down on here, and then I sketch out the surface shape. And when I have the surface shape, hang on just a second, so I just sketch right on top, and it can be approximate, depending on how picky it needs to be. If it's a real tight fit, then that might not be such a good idea. Eef, look at me scribbling, ha ha ha. I took my eyes off of that and went haywire. Okay, so I have that, then I lay it on top. I have this white board, just painted a board white with a grid on top. And I lay that on top of there, and then I can get it straight. So I want my line straight and my line straight. So I get it lined up. That way I don't have to do so much folding like I used to do. And then I secure it with tape, and then I start designing my piece. If I have a real difficult design to do, then I might layer another piece of tracing paper, so if I make a mistake, I don't have to erase on my original. And sometimes I might have layer after layer of this, and then I would lay a final piece of tracing paper on top and trace the original pattern, and then trace it onto my piece. What we're going to do, I got 3 coats of paint on here. It didn't coat in 2, and we're going to dry rub. So I have an oval crescent, hello, I can never say this, a crescent stencil brush. It's cut like a crescent, and then it's also tapered this way, so you don't get any blunt lines on there. And I have a hair. If the hairs fall out, just brush them off. Use this totally dry, so you probably are going to want just a couple of them. This is real big. This is a large, okay, and it's about 1 inch and a bit wide. I'm going to put paint on my brush, and then on a dry paper towel, on a tough dry paper towel, not one that sheds, I'm going to rub it all off. Okay, and now we're going to make some of this, oh, I don't know, dreamy kind of background thing. I've got these dandelions that are going to go on here, and I've got his antenna thing to go on. So I think I'll start down here. Just want to make some movement in the background. I don't want it round. I want it round. I can say that again. I want it irregular, kind of just dreamy back there. Don't make a pattern. Almost like, you know how when you do polka dots, you never want polka dots to be all like in a row or whatever. And some are dark and some are light. The lighter areas, reload your brush as you need to. The lighter areas are going to be more towards the middle, so I might deepen that color. If you get it on the pattern area, don't worry, because you're going to be basing that in. And they can kind of connect if you want them to move around together so that they're not distinctive circles. I should cut through the different elements. And we'll add some more of this later to deepen it, but it's nice to get this on before we put our pattern on, so we're not going to have to do all this work to erase. Okay, so just work our way around. I had a big plan for this to be red, white, and blue. I wanted the butterfly the whole time, but as I got back from convention and then went and taught out at in Missouri, then I ran out of time to get this out before red, white, and blue time, so I decided to make it just a summery butterfly, which I think I'm going to like a lot. I like these jeweled butterfly look, and I love this green background with the mottled colors. Now we'll go back in and deepen. You're not going to want to do this as bright, and it'll be within. If it's still wet, it'll trap the color onto itself, and that is ugly. So be careful. And I can really see when I'm looking on here whether or not I've got a polka dotted kind of effect. I might increase the size of my blobs here. Maybe see how that was just like right in the middle, and then there's going to be this dandelion, and then the head of this, and then this other thing. Maybe it's a good idea for that to fill in under those elements and be larger. And then maybe this one maybe they can kind of all just kind of sort of connect. You know, just that misty part touching so it doesn't look so dotty. Squint your eyes when you're doing this, and you'll see whether or not you've got polka dots going on. You could also add some cross-hatching, which we might do later when we see what we've got. Like I've told you before, when I do these, for those of you buying this later, this is part of the packet of the month for 2008, but I always design these right on the camera so you guys get every stinking step I do. You don't get to miss anything, because then I edit out any mistakes that I make, so you don't get to repeat my bad things, but you do get the good stuff. Okay, I'm thinking I'm liking that. Do I have a little bit of a crossy thing going on there? Okay. Alright, let's see what we got. Okay, I think that's bright enough for right now. And we'll deepen in some of this background area with a little bit of midnight green when we see what we've got. No, it was going to be this bright, did you? This mix right here is honey brown plus a little bit of our desert turquoise. This is desert turquoise. And then our little dots here are going to be based with Indian turquoise, I believe, yeah. Now I get the music out there pretty loud. We got air conditioners on everywhere. It is that time of the year. It's warm out. And muggy today, too. You get the Patricia Rawlinson weather report while we're at this, huh? Okay, so I think I don't like the spacing of this. So like I said, as I go, sometimes you get to go along for a ride you didn't intend. You could turn this off and just go that way, but when you are doing your patterns, and if you ever do your own patterns, you want to look for balance. And I really didn't like how that one was poked way out there and just kind of all by itself. So instead what I'm going to do is have one going off the edge here. And have them all kind of lead towards each other. Okay. I did a little bit better on this one. We'll have to see how I did. They're kind of wide spaced. I don't think I care for that. Yes, I have my pattern all traced out and all these little decorations on there, and I'm erasing everything. Great. You know, the more I paint, the more I find that I can actually do a better job of tracing and doing my patterns with my paintbrush better than I can with a pencil. Which I find kind of funny. I can't handwrite worth a darn, but I can certainly paint okay. So I'm using blue-green in a fairly controlled float, which means that my water is okay, but I don't have a wide bunch of paint on there. I'm going to float on these. If I have to rebase these Indian turquoise, I will. Nice crisp edge. Probably line to crisp that up just a little bit. So I'm going to come over here. I was just playing around off camera to see what I wanted to do. You might find that you need a little more water when you're floating on canvas, but you don't want it to get away from you. You don't want this to become just a green path. Notice I'm going back over. Sometimes it's not smooth, so I just wipe it right back over it while it's still wet, and that'll make it be a nicer float. Now, the unbenefit of canvas is that I can't flip around and just do this other side because this stays wet for so long. The unbenefit? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out here and I'm going to float these other decorations that I have to the inside this time. And I will probably float the other side, but I don't know yet. So I'll kind of keep rotating this around. Okay. I always blot when I do this. Blot my brush. Okay, this is probably far enough away from the other one I can do this. When you're working with one color, if you rotate around, then you don't have to worry about drying if you have a lot of repeat areas. It makes painting just a little bit faster. So the goal is I want these little balls on here and all the decorations to be kind of like dewdrops. But I have to kind of set the stage first. Be careful when you're floating next to something you've already floated that you don't wipe it off. Okay, this is about dry here. So you can see it's kind of getting decorated a little bit. We can probably scooch in just a little bit. And we'll come back, oops, and keep your banner out of your paint. Oh, and I've already got my clickable eraser into my paint. I'll just clean that up. Things on the wings. Let's float inside them. It's kind of a C-stroke. So when you do a C-stroke, you lock your hand on your brush. Now, let me get my brush reloaded. Notice I have to reload every time. So I start off skinny. My hand is locked, it's not rotating. It gets fatter at the top. And as I pull it in, it gets skinny again. That's the definition of a C-stroke. Kind of fat, skinny, fat, or skinny, fat, skinny. Okay, so same thing here. We'll start over here. It'll kind of come off like a line. And as I come over the top, it'll get wider. If it looks too stripy, like that one's a little stripy, I'm going to go back and just blend it on my piece. You know, always if you make a stroke, don't feel like you have to get there the first time. You know, if it doesn't look right when you do it, then redo it. You know, a lot of times I see students or other painters, you know, they do it the one time like they were supposed to, and in their eye it doesn't look right, but they're afraid to redo it. Don't be afraid. You are the artist. You are the ultimate one that decides here, so whatever you decide is right. If you think it's enough, right? Okay, try not to run my hand through things, so I'll flip it over. Get it wide there. And I knew I wasn't going to make this one, but I did it anyway. Time to get a little more paint, a little more water. Okay, so I have a little bit, this one's a little bit, oops, that one's just a little bit skinny right here. So I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to increase its weight. I don't like how skinny that was. And this one is also a little bit wimpy. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and increase its weight according to the other guys. You know, I'm balancing it out as I paint. And that should be, I think, just a little bit stronger. As we get out, it should be a little bit lighter. So I think that's good. These water drops here, or these little jewels, is we're going to float with a kind of a concentrated float. So it's going to be with blue, green, kind of strong. We don't want a lot of water. It doesn't really even have to be that well blended. You want a nice, really strong leading edge of color. And what you're going to do is just on the underneath part, if I can see around myself, real strong C stroke. Gonna get practicing on your C strokes here today. Just float underneath all those just on the same side. Same intensity, pretty strong next to the edge. So reload when you think you need to. Probably aren't going to need to reload too much water. We're not traveling very far. Okay, so I got that. Now you're going to do the same thing with all of these, but it's dry. Sometimes you might need to let it cool. And I've got, if I can keep it clean here, ultra blue deep on my brush, and I'm going to do a nice pretty C stroke float over the top. Make sure it's well blended in the middle. Don't want to cover the whole piece, don't want it too strong. I want this one to be a pretty float. If I got my glasses on, I'd probably be able to see better. Whenever I take a trip, like I just got back from St. Louis, whenever I take a trip, everything kind of gets lost and unput away. Now see, I don't like how that's so strong, so I need to blend a little bit more. And just when you're doing this kind of thing and you want a nice blend, it's important to let the brush do its work. Don't force it. Let it glide across. Let the paint come off, and it's all in the load. So if you haven't got it loaded right, work on your loading. Okay, I'm going to cut across just a little bit as well. If I need to blot, I blot with my finger. And I'm not a real big put my hands in paint kind of a gal, but there's nothing like a little finger mop when you're doing your project. Okay, we're going to do the same C stroke action, but we're going to do it in white. And now the white is real important that it follows the C and it doesn't cover up all the Indian turquoise. But it does need a strong leading edge. So like I said, you're going to get some float practice today. If you don't like to float, or you really don't know how to float, there's a DVD called How to Float on my website that covers like all the cheater ways and all kinds of tips. Okay, so now that fell apart. I'll go ahead and reload. When stuff falls apart, it's better just to start over with a constant so you know what you've got. Get that little sparkle in there. We go into just a dip dot of strong white on our brush, and we're going to make just a little dash in the darkest blue area on the upper right side. Okay, if you start losing your point, then just retip it in white. Okay, and that's our little dewdrop moment there. We'll do kind of the same thing. I'm going to have to switch to a smaller brush than my number 12 flat. I could probably do it with a 12, but I think it'll get just a little out of control. This might be one of those moments where an angle shader might be a happy thing for you if you're comfortable using them. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing to these little dots outside here. I'm going to keep my colors on the same side. I'm going to rotate so that I will be shading when I shade. If you end up with skin, I had the blow dryer going, not the blow dryer, the air conditioner going in between changing DVDs and stuff, and so now I've got skin on my paint. So you want to make sure that you keep fresh paint when you're trying to float. I'm going to telephoto you in. Okay, so come down here, just nice and strong C strokes. It starts becoming a little less important. Whoops, I'm going to throw things around. after going to convention and then coming back and immediately going to teach, my painting table in my room is a disaster. I am so looking forward to cleaning time. Okay, and I think for these big drops here, I think what we're going to do is we're going to come along and just go ahead and shade under the noses of them. Maybe this would be a good time to turn our do I really want to change that? I think I'll keep it the same. I'll fix that other guy once I can get close to it. And we'll come down and work our way. Oops, let me get you on camera. Hello. Get you on camera without my banner flying into. I have to hold up the tail here. This is one of those where it does, your float isn't going to matter so much. It just, as long as it's nice and crisp, it doesn't have to be well blended or anything like that. I'm going to keep them pointing kind of sideways a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and just shade right next to them. And then on here, we'll come down below and right on a seam there. And on this one, we'll come around, whoops, here, and I don't know. I don't think ultimately it'll matter too much. Except for these guys over here. It's just that little float coming around the end. Got a little tail there, so I'll blot my brush. You can kind of form them a little bit. If you got out of hand, shape them up just a little bit. It's a nice way. I'm like leaning on my hand like, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm just like blah blah blah. This is really such a relaxing, kind of fun thing to do. I hope that you find that you can get into it just a little bit. Because it's just, it's a not moment, you know, one of those things where you're painting along and it just isn't a whole lot of work. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing here. I'm trying to decide if I want to go. We'll do it over the round. I like how that looks on the other side. So I'll come around on this side and then we'll have to do it opposite on the other side. Reload. You don't always have to rinse your brush out when you're reloading paint. You can just pick up a little bit more water. Okay, then we go around the top, around the top. Now switching, if you're not a lefty, you know, if you can't do it the other way, then what you can do is flip your project over. Okay. Now I need this one right here to be done. There we go. Always don't be afraid to turn the angle of your project. Oh, my paint is laying. My paint is laying in my puddles of paint. It is so time to clean up. I'm gonna make a mess. I'm not really careful. Now we're gonna get into our blue. Baloo. If I can find a spot to blend. Okay, and we'll have that just come down. The same side that it's shaded on. Do the same thing over here. Now that I have that paint laying in the paint, I've decided that's a happy accident. Whoopsie. And it's keeping my canvas project off of that same puddle of paint, so I'll wipe that off in a minute. Okay, now come the other way. Do the opposite side of Shouldn't have rinsed. I forgot these dots over here. Now I'm sure we're going to have some more decoration on the inside there, but I just don't know where yet, so not prepared for that yet. Okay, so it's going to be opposite of the nice thing about these banners is you can paint really bright things on them because they're going by your door or outside, and so it gives us an opportunity to paint things like bejeweled butterflies so that we can decorate with those outside or by our door for the season, but you don't have to worry about it being out all the time. Remember, you want to be careful about creasing your canvas. Okay. Switch on camera. Dots. Some of these go long. Okay, so we're going to load Indian turquoise onto our little dry scumbly brush. This one's a dome. Doesn't matter if it's dome or crescent, as long as it's the right size for the job. Okay, we're going to rub off all the paint, dry rub here, and we're going to rub into this area right here. Nice and soft to start with so you don't make a harsh line. And shape following, just kind of tuck it in according to the shape that's there. You can hear that I'm scrubbing harder as I continue, and I can rotate my brush to get a side with more paint on it. Get it brighter. We want this to stay teal, so we're not going to go into white or anything to make it lighter still. But we do want it to be as kind of bright as we can make it, because that blue is going to really reflect nicely off of a light area like that. Okay, and then we're just going to float right along the wall there. Kind of a big float, so you could walk it out. If your dry rubbing isn't quite cured, it might lift it, so sometimes you want to just go ahead and blow dry your dry rubbing. So even though it's really dry when you're doing it, I think it needs to cure. I'm going to add the lines over here. I'm still debating over here. I tried bringing in a little bit of pink. Sometimes you just need to try things out, but I was debating between these larger little nuggets. Oops, you can't see what I'm talking about. I'm still debating on this side. I've got the lines in, but I can't decide whether I want these little nuggets like this or if I want strokes. So well, you guys will be the first to know. And so we'll just take out of the middle of these. We'll do those Y's. Why? Because I like you. Okay, a little bit of water. It helps when you're lining to soak your brush in water for a few minutes before you start lining. Okay, and that it just helps the brush carry the water. And my brush just woke up and it's real hot out and all that kind of stuff. So let's see, I'm going to pretend like that's one of those. Sometimes you just have to break your own little rule here. Okay, so that's going to come out of here, follow along, and then it's going to make its little Y. These little diamonds right here are pansy lavender, and then I'm just floating across the top of them, kind of arching that just a little bit with the whitewash. Okay, and then we will shade. The question is, with what color? We'll try the Ultra Blue Deep. It's kind of pretty. Got to kind of round that out right there. We may have to highlight one more time. And give it just a little highlight on that side, on the blue side right there. Little jewels everywhere, a little bejeweled. Rub with the Indian turquoise. Have I got the right name? Yes, Indian turquoise. In the middle of these sections right here, lighten them up. I've got strokes kind of traced in there. Testing out these, whoops, hello, on the camera. Okay, testing out these strokes right here to see how I like them. But I do know that I want these highlighted in the middle. So just scrub in some of the Indian turquoise. Remember to rub off on your paper towel. Dry rubbing is such a relaxing technique because it's just like scribbling with crayons. You know, you don't have to stay in the lines or out of the lines or whatever. You can just kind of be whatever you want. Start out light pressure and then set it down a little bit more, and just easy cheesy. This section, I kind of have these in sections now. This is like a blue section and this is a green section. So we'll go a strong float with the blue-green, and that's going to be underneath. I'm going to go ahead and go under the strokes. Okay, with a strong blue-green float. Like I said earlier, this is where you can kind of clean up your mess if you make a mess with your base coating. Maybe I want that a little bit stronger. Use. What is it? We have a big thunder and lightning storm going on outside, so if you hear rumbling, that's what we got. I mean, it went from broad daylight to just really ugly quickly. Okay, so we are going to shade to the top. Let's see, I think I'm going to pull towards me. That'll be a little easier for me. So sometimes when you're doing your strokes or doing shading and things like that, sometimes it helps to flip around to get a good angle. Okay, and then we're going to pull this to us here. Okay, and then we'll add our white highlight, and you're going to do that to all of these strokes. When you, let's see, do I want to keep that shade all the way under? Okay, so we're going to keep it to the top or to the inside of the stroke, and then when we come down here, we'll move it to this underside. But same technique all the way through. Forgot to talk about was making sure that we get that white highlight, so I thought I'd go through that. And I always want to give everybody the most complete instruction without being super duper repetitive. Okay, so get the white on there. I'm going to keep that one kind of skinny. Always, you know, use those fingers. Okay. And then the final step will be to add the sparkles. Make sure it's heavy paint. If it's not heavy paint, it won't show. Ooh, that's heavy. Won't show up so well. I'm going to have to unheavy that one. So how do we unheavy, you ask? Holy cow. There's stuff coming out of the sky. Okay, I spit on a Q-tip and ta-da, presto, unheavied. And then just throw that away. Okay, so go back and try it again. There we go, that's a little bit better. Now that we have those all done, we need to shade next to our the back of our little butterfly, carrying those giant bejeweled wings. I kind of feel sorry for this butterfly. Okay, nice and big float. Let's kind of float that out just a little bit. And float down the sides to kind of finish that off up there. And down here on the bottom as well. I based the body of the butterfly with Pansy Lavender plus Honey Brown. Okay, sorry, my bottles aren't memorized. Okay, and then I'm working on the shading up here, so we'll see what that ends up being. And then these strokes are Pansy Lavender plus plus Camel. Pansy Lavender plus Camel, sorry. And that just to make it lighter, light enough to see but not so bright. If I put just plain Camel out there, see how bright that's going to be. Okay, so we don't want it that bright, otherwise it just steals all the thunder. That was the spit eraser right there. Okay, figuring this out, I got out a bottle of Plum, and I'm shading the strokes with Plum across the top, and then shading underneath them without wiping the paint off with Plum. I'm going to shade the front of his head, her head, it's definitely a she, with Plum as well. Okay. Highlight with Camel. Okay, just to the front. Oops, stay in the line. Part of that has to do with me pulling strokes towards me in an unnatural way. So you do want to make sure, I lost a paintbrush. There it is. You want to make sure that you are pulling them towards you in a natural way. You don't want to be pulling them stiffly. Okay, so we'll get you on here. And same thing with their little highlights. Pardon me. We've got the decorations on the antenna. The antenna is based with Pansy Lavender and the decorations are Indian Turquoise. So we will use our blue and we will shade all of these little drops. Make them into our jewels. When your float stops getting crisp or being crisp, refresh it with some paint. Get an angle, I can't see where I'm going because it's on the other side. And that's what Q-tips are for, right? Okay. No problemo. We're going to shade underneath. I think we'll go to our Plum for that. Keeping it very, very, very strong. Now we have to go to our white, which might end up being screaming color out there. Hopefully not. I'll start with this guy's a little bit bigger. On my piece, I'm making little divots right here because of my angle of my brush. Okay, so you got to keep that angle straight, otherwise you will make a divot. Okay, we're going to shade her little face with espresso. So she's got these little eye lids. How are we going to do this? We'll shade next to them and underneath them. Shade under her nose. Don't make it look like a pig snout. And shade under the sides of her mouth. On each side I'm totally out of paint. I'm kind of out of palette too. You know, it really does help if you are organized when you paint, because then you can keep everything cleaner and nicer. However, not to be today. See, while we're doing this too, huh? What a concept. Highlight her eyelid and her over the top of her nose. Oops. My husband says that this little butterfly looks like a who. Little Cindy Lou Who from Dr. Seuss. Okay, so give her a lovely little smile. Lovely little nose. And she's got those big, long, sweeping eyelashes, which you would expect on a butterfly. Okay, and I kept it simple. I don't want her face to become like this whole thing, and we're going to have this big dandelion right there, so. Okay, and you want that thin, or it's not going to flow right. And now she has some little hairs. Take light French blue, if you can find it, shake it up real good because I haven't used it in a long time. And we're going to see what we can see here with these dandelions. Okay, so first thing you're going to do is get your dry crescent stencil brush, rub it off on the paper towel. And you're going to highlight fuzzily. You don't want it to be base coated. Fuzzily? I don't think that's a word. I'm going to go right over my little butterfly. Every now and again, stenciling is a good idea, stippling. Okay, she's kind of making a wish is what I've got her doing. Okay, and this one, I think, let's see, let's get, this one's over the top of her. I want this to cover a little bit more because it is over the top of her. I don't want it to be so obvious that she's under there. Okay, so I'll go back and probably do that one more time. And then this final one is going to be back over here. And I may need to go for one that's going to be back here. Now this will be lighter still because I want this to be behind this leaf. And so it'll be further away. And even though I know it's wrong, okay, now I have one, put a little hint of one right down here. Not going over. This one's going to be stronger. Reload my brush. Okay, I think this one's stronger too. A little bit stronger in the middle. This is a fadey out one. Okay, Spaltum, the centers of these get to be brown. Little polka dot middles right there. A black plus asphaltum. I don't want the black to be too black, but I really don't want to take out another color for this. Real washy, blot it with your finger. French blue, and it's all watery. And I'm going to take this, and it's not going to show very much. I'm going to make these little crisscross dandelion. They're just like little stars, like you'd make, just crosses. As many as you want, as far as like how fluffy they are. Bring those out to the outside, start in the middle, and you can go right over the top of your center. And if yours don't show, then switch and put a little bit more white in it. Mine aren't showing very much. So I'm going to go into white, pick some of that up, if I can get it out of there. I don't want it to go too crazy white, but I do want it to show. Keep them nice and fine. I'm starting down here with this one that I I'm not going to see very much because I want to screw up over here in the not center of interest. Okay, gonna have to squeeze out some white. More water. Now a little bit more white. There we go, now I can see that. Keep the brightest color in the middle, because that'll be the top ones. And kind of keep them forming round shapes. Keep a lot of water in your brush so that your liner brush stays fine. I've got my glasses on now so I can see. Keeping everything fine. It's a kind of a layering effect. You're not going to get there all from the first step. You don't want them lined up in rows though, so be real careful. It's kind of like polka dots. You know, polka dots are kind of ugly if they're all lined up in a row. Now let's get plain white and see how bright we can make this. Okay, plain white. I want that brown center to kind of fade back. It's there, but it's not supposed to be there brightly. Okay, and then what we can do is, I need a finer, maybe just a little round scumbly brush with my white dry rub. You could almost stencil on top of these and rub when you get enough paint off. You have to reload. This one's not so far away gone. Okay, getting a little. And just that straight white. A little stronger. I'm going to go into our camel color. And we'll pull out the stem. Okay, and they need to fade, so don't make them too. I guess if you could see that, that'd be better. Can hear you guys at home. I've got my green. I used Hauser Light Green, and now I'm going to mix Hauser Light plus Hauser Dark. Is that right? No, plus Evergreen. Just like to make a middle value. I don't want these all to be the same green color, especially these coming off to the side. That's a little dark. You have to adjust it according to how light you got your background. Yeah, it's almost 1-to-1. Okay, so I'll just make some different value leaf grain thingies. As it gets a, whoops, now I gotta change the shape because I'm not redoing the background. Okay. So those will tuck in behind. You know, this is folk art, guys. This isn't, you know, real life. There's obviously not jeweled butterflies and things like that. But you know what? That's what's so cool about paint, is we can make our own little fantasy world, and it can include anything we want. And like I said earlier, this is, you know, this is temporary decoration, so that means that, you know, it's not gonna, we don't have to redecorate our house to go with these colors and stuff. So that gives us permission to be a little bit wild and crazy. I think we need to bring some up from over here. Just fill in a little bit. Maybe a little thicker. Okay, and something's got to come up out of here. Now you see why I trace the pattern from the finished product and not from my own pattern that I paint from, because it all changes. Just when I think I have a plan, something goes terribly, terribly awry. Now it would have probably been smarter for me to base coat these darker ones first. However, I needed to see, for my purposes, I needed to see where they were going to be coming from before I put the dark ones in, so that's okay. And we're going to have something coming up in the background, so that's going to be much darker. Let's see what we got going on here. We need to have something coming up from down here. We have our leaves. We've got them darker, faded in out here, and then down on this one, I wanted this to fade in as it got near the bottom, so I went ahead and just washed on just a little bit of the darker on that light bright leaf. And now, what was I going to do? Okay, we have to get into our our camel color, and we'll just highlight down the upper side of these stems so that they look like they're actually there. They faded away on me. I decided to want some ladybugs crawling around. So they are based with Vivid Violet, if you can believe it. We're going to bejewel them too, I believe. Oh, red violet on our Vivid Violet ladybugs. On the back ends, because I want the highlight to be near the front for most contrast. So then that'll be white. My white is junking up on me. Now we're going to have to add shines and stuff, but we also have to add spots. To our get into our light French blue. It's time to make some blowing dandelion wishes. So we'll just rub on where we kind of want the path to go. They're going to be a little stronger down here, and then they'll kind of flit off randomly, randomly, I guess that's the word. Sorry, I get into this side of my brain and I can't find my words. Okay, I'm going to have some of these come off here, a couple over here. Not too much over out of the center of interest. Okay. It's going to be the same way that we did before, so with thinned blue, and then we'll reinforce them with white. Some will be stronger, some will be lighter. And you could tap in the middle if you needed it to be much stronger. Use our greens, which is going to be our big dry rub brush. I'm going to stand up for this and get into my light foliage green, and I've lost my paper towel. Oh, I had an exploding bottle of red violet earlier. That's where my paper towel went. Okay, I'm going to wipe it on there, and I want to increase our greens in the magical area, if that makes sense. Okay. Let's bring some of this up here. Crisscrossy. And this green will give a little bit of weight. We might have to beef up our dandelions again. And I'm going to go scarily into this bright green, the yellow green. Scarily? I am in Pattyism land today. Making up all my own words. Pick up more of, what is that, yellow green, I think we said. Yellow green, yep. Excuse me. Okay, it's a little magic land going on here. That helps kind of balance out. Oh, this puppy needs to be shaken. You know, she's so bright, our little butterfly lady is so bright that putting a little bit of brighter greens, but I told you at the beginning that we'd have to come back and do this. Once you see how bright these colors are, you go, whoa, gotta lift everything up. I'm gonna bring this back here, so it's coming out from behind her wings. Okay, it's getting brighter. I'm running out of paper towel. And keep it off. Remember how we clean up our wing? Actually, I like that green on that wing. I think we'll have to put some of that in there. Back here, we don't have any. Okay. Now it's almost like there's something magical happening. Decided we needed some lightning bugs. And then I decided that I did them, and then I decided you needed to see them. Whoopsie. Okay, I wiped off, I had them base coated right here. I wiped that off, so if you ever have that, I wiped it off and got the green. I'm going to go back to my green color, to that initial green, because it's got white in it. And I'm just going to tap on, almost like makeup, and I've got a blemish. Okay, tap that on, get the blemish kind of hidden, and then I need to dry it, even though it's really dry. It still needs to be dried, otherwise you'll wipe it off again. And then I'll go into my brighter green. Oops, and my brush is shedding. And I'll tap in a little bit of that. I don't want these to become so obnoxious. Then I'll pick up a little bit of cad yellow and tap that right in the centers. So what I did is in the areas that I strengthened with my green, then I just rubbed in just a little bit of a firefly kind of a look, and this is a little bit bigger of a firefly. Bigger of a... Alright, so she's in. Making wishes. Lucky ladybugs in front of her, pretty butterfly, fireflies, although I'm not sure the ladybug would be out at night, but I don't care. Maybe she's sleeping in her wishful dreamland there. The word is just base coated with Hauser Light Green. We're going to take a little bit of white in with our Hauser Light, and we're going to just highlight the center section of the letters. Just kind of with a little dry brush kind of movement. Not a lot of water or anything in our brush. Just enough white to make it brighter. Okay, just enough to accent. And then we'll go into the yellow green. Dirty brush as well. I'll go right over the top of that. Almost like a glaze, but it's dirty brush, so it's... The yellow-green wasn't showing up very well earlier, so my thought is that we'll treat it almost like a glaze by having the white underneath, and it'll backlight. Okay, and I'm thinking this is pretty magical stuff going on. Got the butterfly making wishes. With thinned Hauser Light and my liner brush, let's go ahead and put some blades of grass down here to kind of diffuse some of that stuff going on. Not very many, just enough. Okay, that just gives us a little bit of a grounding effect. When I'm painting and when I'm doing this kind of stuff, like I'm just looking at this up here and I'm going, oh, I kind of wish that was darker. So I've got my dry rub of black, green. I just want to, just almost like antiquing, but we're doing it with a dry rub. Bring that down just a little bit over here on the side. Frame it, to bring the eye in. Am I liking that? It's hard to tell. I think I do. Okay. Same thing, I'll bring it down over here just a little bit. We don't want to bring it way in. Just a bit. Okay, I'm thinking. Add some more. I need to come down here. Do it over here. That's just gonna make everybody sit really good. Bring it down to the bottom, up the side a little bit. This is not a very balanced, what's that, asymmetrical or symmetrical? I guess it's more asymmetrical than symmetrical design. Okay, thinking that's great. Oh, you know what? I'm real happy with this, you guys. Dry rub just a little bit of the, what is it called? Vivid Violet onto the body of our little lady here. Just a little smidgy. I like it as cheeks on her face. Add just some snowy sparkles of thinned Hauser Light Green, and then pick up washy cadmium yellow. Is it cad yellow? I think it is. Just nice and healthy sized spatters. And pick up some of that black green. Where did my black green go? There it is. scatter with that. Then some black. Dirty brush. And do the outer edges with that. Okay, I'm going to be crazy daring and then some white and do some white with that. Okay, now this is just going to be tapping way high. Okay, I think that's good enough.